planning on keeping you too terribly long tonight. What I'm going to do, thank you now. I'm going to break this message down into two parts because there's a little bit more there than I want to try to handle. I'll make sure I get everything that said that needs to be said, and no more than needs to be said. Amen. All right, John chapter, preaching through the book of John. When you get to verse number 12 of John chapter 8, I'm just going to use this verse for tonight. Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am. When he said, I am, they understood that he was saying he was Jehovah God. I am that I am. They understood that. All through the New Testament. That's why they said, you say you're God. He did. He just, matter of fact, in the book of John, there are 7 I ams that we'll deal with as we get to. We've already dealt with I am the bread of life. But he said, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. I want to deal with that verse over the next couple of weeks. I think it's a very important verse. But tonight, I want to look at this, I am the light of the world. When it talks about the light of the world, you've got one, the earth and the universe, all right? That's the world. He created the world over in Genesis chapter 1. We're going to go over there in just a few minutes. But then at the same time, when he's talking about the world, for God so loved the world that he gave. So he's talking about individuals also. So he's talking about two different things when he says, I am the light of the world. So he's the light of the world, and he's the light of the world in the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. But I'm going to look at that phrase just for a minute tonight. Just turn on over to Genesis. And I want to go back. We're not going to go back far, 6,000 years. I think that'd be far enough, don't you? Go back to the beginning. Ussher puts the beginning at 4004 BC. I saw some evolution this the other day and I saw again where they said that every person was born of the same mother, and they said about 6,000 years ago. I thought that was interesting. And I thought, yeah, that's 6,000 years ago they were. Her name was Eve. But when we get back to here, now we're talking about light. God said, Jesus said, I am the light of the world. One of your ways of interpreting the Word of God, I use these often. I want you to get used to them. You've got the context principle of Bible interpretation. That means don't ever lift a verse out of its context. When you do, you can make a pretext out of it. That's how a lot of people get into bad theology, when they try to interpret something but not within the context in which it's written. We find that a lot today, where news media will take 5 words out of a 45-minute speech somebody said, and you can make them say anything you want. And so they do that all the time. But tonight I want to use again the principle of first mention. When you get over to Genesis chapter number 1, we're so familiar with this. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. He's talking about the world. Get Genesis, he created the world. Created everything it is. There's nothing here tonight that God did not make. I still say these people are absolute fools that don't believe in God. Everything in nature that I look at just screams design. And I'm not talking about just design because somebody didn't know what he's doing. I'm talking about absolute perfection in everything that you see out here tonight. We've been fighting a barn swallow. She's trying to build on our light on our porch. She ain't going to do that. I don't care if she ain't going to build on my porch. We got a small porch. I got a chair under that. We'll be cleaning mess up off of my chair that I sit in. We'll be cleaning up mess off. Gets mud all over the brick, everything else. So what we do, hey, I want her to have her little nest, so we're going to let her build her nest. But it ain't going to be on my porch. So what we did, we took a Walmart bag and put it over the top of the light and tied that thing down. I've washed off her mess 3 times a day for 3 or 4 days, got tired of doing that. Hey, thank God for the swallow. Hey, we're not hurting the swallow. She can just build someplace else, not on my porch. But what she's doing, beautiful little bird, she's doing what God ordained her to do. She'll build that nest someplace. I've got outbuildings. I've got all kinds of places built, all of the nests that she wants up there. The perfection of God when He made this world. And notice what He did. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and that word "and" just keeps this going together. All right. A lot of people try to put a gap in here. That gap is between their ears. There's no gap. He created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. Now, when He made this thing, it was without form and void. Why? He explains it. He said, "And darkness was upon the face of the deep. The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water." Why was it without form and void? One, the earth was covered by water. You didn't see mountains, you didn't see valleys, you didn't see anything. It was just like standing on the Atlantic shore and looking out over the ocean out there. All you see is perfectly rounded, nothing but water, and that's the way it was. But the second reason it was without form and void is because darkness was upon the face of the deep. It's interesting that darkness came before light in creation. Well, you look at humanity today. Darkness comes before light. You don't have to teach a young person or a child to be a sinner. You don't have to teach them to do wrong. That's a part of their makeup to do wrong. These little children, I like what the missionary said the other day. He said, "I'm sorry, but missionaries' children aren't born saved." So he said, you got to lead them to the Lord, all right? You got to lead them to do that. But we find that there was darkness before there was light, and that darkness was upon the face of the deep. That means this water was not shallow. It covered everything that was deep. Now, verse number 3, and. Notice the ands. And in verse 2, and in verse 3, and in verse 4. This is a rapidly going thing that we've got here. And God said, now, let there be light, and there was light. Look at verse 4. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So 24-hour period. Boy, He got a lot done in a 24-hour period. But what I want to look at just for a minute tonight is the light. The world without light lies in darkness. You can make a spiritual application to that. People have darkened hearts today, but I find it's, for the most part, it is a willful darkness. We live in days when the Lord said it'd be that way, when people don't want Jesus Christ. They don't want to go to heaven. They don't believe there's a hell, so they just think they can do anything they want, any way they want, anytime they want. Listen, that's not reality. I'm glad for parents that try to structure the lives of their children so that they've got structure when they get older. You've got to do that with children. You can't just let children do anything they want anytime that they want. They've got to have structure in their life. And I'm glad that I was raised that way. But we find in here that the water covered the earth, and its physical characteristics were hidden by both water and then also because of an absolute absence of light. Nothing could be observed. A lot of times I use an illustration. How many of you have ever been in a cave and they turned the lights off? Let me tell you, you know what dark looks like? I worked miles back underground. Matter of fact, we went in and they were actually mining coal from 511, which was about 10 or 12 miles away. They were mining coal and belting that 11 miles underground. We actually had 2 belts coming out of Fi's number 9. One was number 11 coal coming out, and over the top of it was number 11 on top and 9 underneath. Listen, when you went back there, folks, there is no light. I got used to that. Matter of fact, I don't mind. I like pitch black. When I sleep, I don't like night lights on. I don't like any of these things on. I used to go back in the back of those mines back there and spend a lot of time to myself. I'm talking about miles back by myself. And when I was caught up with what I was doing, I've got a clock up here. I can kind of wake up when I want to. I turn my light out. Sit back there in an absolute absence of light. You can stick your finger in your eye and not know that finger is there. They turn that out and they ask you to sit down or whatever. But without light, darkness then is complete and everything is without form and void. And these caves, you have stalagmites and stalactites. Everybody know what they are? All right. A stalagmite, it grows up from the bottom, stalactite from the top. The way you tell them apart, the stalactite holds tight to the ceiling, and it doesn't go. But the stalagmite might reach the ceiling if it grows long enough. So it gives you to work. You can't see anything. Now, that's the way this was in the beginning. Absolute void. Now, you need to differentiate between the heavens and the earth and eternity. Now this is hard to do because there was eternity before there was a heaven and earth. Eternity's always been there. So there's life beyond what we perceive. There's life beyond that. Always has been life beyond that. But when he created the heaven and the earth, he did it with absolutely absence of light. There was no natural light at this time. He didn't make the sun and moon and the stars until the fourth day. He turned the lights on the first day. I thank God that he did that. I'm glad that he didn't go all the way through creation in the dark, but he's progressively letting you see. But he turned that light on, and it was not natural light. It certainly was not artificial light. We've got lighting in here tonight. It's artificial light. You have a storm come through, the artificial light goes out. You start a fire. That's natural, and yet it's artificial in that we make those fires. So before there was ever natural light, and before there was ever light that we create, God lit this up. Why? Because God is light. Now, when you get eternity outside of the heaven and the earth, there's no darkness. We'll look at that. Hey, you get to the end of the Bible, there's no darkness, folks. There's no darkness out there, except for one place, which I may deal with a little bit later. So, without God's light, the world remains in darkness, and only God's light takes away the darkness and permeates it. I thought about that spiritually. Darkness is a choice, as is light spiritually. You've got a choice tonight. You can be saved or you can not be saved. Isn't that a blessing? Aren't you glad God gave you a choice? People like choices, all right? You can choose. People just choose. I hand out tracts. Most people will take them, and thank God for the Bible Belt. Most people are glad to get a tract and have that tract in their hand. They're glad to get that. But they don't have to. I've had some just look at me and they weren't mean about it. They said, no, thank you. Just not interested in that. That's their choice. They don't have to come to Christ. They don't have to know Christ. They don't have to go to heaven when they die. These are choices that we make. But God's children are to walk in light. That's why I'm going to break this thing down in two different things. But over in John chapter 12, verse 35, then Jesus said unto them, yet a little while the light is with you. Walk while ye have the light, lest darkness come upon you. For he that walketh in darkness knoweth not whither goeth. Over in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8, he said, for ye were sometimes darkness, not in darkness. He said, ye were sometime darkness. That's darkness in our soul. That's darkness in our heart. That's darkness in our life. I take the 28 years before I came to know Christ. I only have one problem with that, I wish I'd gotten saved years before I did. Boy, it saved me a whole lot of problems. I was hard-headed. I was brick-headed like a lot of people. I thought I could do anything I wanted my way with very little accountability. Even though I was raised in a good home, I just simply did it my way. Thank God I got in. But I was darkness itself. The darkness of my soul. Over in 1 John chapter number 1, he said, if we say we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. John chapter 2, he that hateth his brothers in darkness and walketh in darkness and knoweth not whither he goeth, because the darkness hath blinded his eyes. Now we find in Genesis that God did something with this light. Notice in verse number 4, he said that the light was good, but he said that God divided the light from the darkness. God divided that, all right? In a minute it's going to be dark outside, but it's going to be light in here. There is a division between the two. If you see the earth from space, you can see where the sun's coming up and going down. You see that as it moves across where it shades getting darker as you go into the night. As you come into the daylight, you see the darkness gradually, just a streak where it starts changing. Because light and darkness cannot coexist. If you come into here and it's pitch black, the moment you flip these switches over here, the darkness flees. The darkness has to dissipate. So he divided these two things to where they could not coexist. We live in a day of what they call gray areas. What is gray? Gray is a mixture of black and white. People kind of try to live in that little area to where the darkness is and the light is, and you've got that little area of what we call twilight in between. They try to live in the darkness, but not in total darkness. They like what they call gray areas. Well, we find in here that God placed a division between them. Look at verse number 5. And God called the night day. The word day means warm or hot. Thank God when the sun comes up, it warms up. As a general rule. Boy, isn't it a blessing on a cold morning when that sun comes out and you see that temperature begin to rise up, the daytime. You feel warmer in the daytime than you feel at night. One of the coldest times when I'm out hunting is in what I call false light. As long as I'm sitting in darkness, I do pretty good. I don't know if Chris is that way or not, but when it starts to barely crack the coldest part of that day, have you ever noticed on your temperature gauges, the coldest part of the day is right at daybreak itself. And then as the sun gets up, it picks up. But he called the word light. We get our word illumination or luminary from it, and it just simply means light. It can mean happiness. He talks about walking in the light, and I'll deal with that later. It means bright, clear, daytime. You can see where you're going. You know what you're doing. The Bible said that the night cometh when no man works. Now, we live in the days of people that work like moles. I did in the mines. I saw a thing on New York City, and they've got people that work underground under New York City every day. They've got a union, and these men go down under and dig in these subways and everything underground like a bunch of rats or a bunch of moles down there. But we find that light means light or clear. The word darkness simply means darkness, night, black, obscurity means you cannot see. So he put a differentiation between night and day here. And he said the evening and the morning were the first day. So he divided light from darkness. He called the light day, the darkness night, and they cannot coexist together. Now, I want to deal with God just for a minute, and then we're going to go home tonight. Not going to be long, but the light of God's person. As we biblically understand who God is, we need to understand that God is light. God doesn't live in light. God is light. I think we're going to get a real eye-opening experience when we finally get to heaven and see God. And I mean, see eternity like it is. Listen, we're not going to have any sun or moon or stars or anything to light anything up. As God is the light of eternity, what we would call eternity past, though it has no past. He's God on the other end of this thing, eternity future. But there's no future. So what you have, eternity, is just one moment, and it's light. Perfectly light. God is the light of that thing. But the light of God's person, over in Psalms 104, I want to read a couple of verses. It says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty." Verse 2, he said this, "Who coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who stretcheth out the heavens like a curtain." The Bible said that God is girded with light. Over in the book of Psalms. Over in Matthew chapter 17, when the Lord was transfigured before the three disciples, the Bible said his face did shine as the sun, his raiment was white as the light. I think about the strength of the sun. You know, as the sun's coming up, you can actually see the sun before it comes up. If you've ever been to the ocean, you watch that little red ball start rising. About everybody's been to the ocean, right? You see that thing coming up and you can look at it. Because you're not seeing the sun, you're actually seeing the reflection of the sun. What happens is our atmosphere, there's a refraction of those light beams, and you actually see the sun before it comes up because of the way the light bends, all right? But when it gets up, all of a sudden the top of it starts turning just white hot. And then you can no longer look at it anymore. If you look at the sun and you stand and look at the sun that's full strength, it will blind you. It will destroy your eyes. You can't do that. You've got to have something to dim or to darken that in order to look at it. When they had these solar eclipses, what we did was I just cut a hole in a piece of cardboard. And then you just hold it up and let the sun, the light, go through that hole, reflect on the ground, and then you can watch the eclipse in the form of a shadow down there. But if you start looking at that, it'll literally put your eyes out. Over in James chapter number 1, verse 17, the Bible calls God the Father of lights. Over in John 1:5, he said this is a message which we've heard of him and declare to you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Cannot coexist with light. Over in Revelation chapter 1, verse 6, the Bible said he had his right hand, in his right hand 7 stars, out of his mouth went a sharp two-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. So we find that God is light in his person. That's why no man can see God and live. They can't look upon him with human eyes and live. But we also find the light of God's place. Now, I'm talking about heaven, where God lives. God's got a place where God resides. Did you know that? It's not in this universe, folks. It's outside of this universe. This universe has an end. This universe does not go on forever and ever, even though they're talking about 50 million light years across, and they're giving us all these astronomical numbers out here. Listen, God made this thing so big and magnificent that it could only glorify God. But I thought about that when he created everything in darkness first. I thought, don't tell the evolutionists, they'll say it was a black hole. It wasn't a black hole. But he created it with the absence of God's light in it. But the place where he resides, over in 1 Timothy chapter 6, it said, who only hath immortality, dwelling in a light which no man can approach unto, whom no man has seen nor can see, to whom be honor and power everlasting. Amen. So where God lives is a light that you and I in our human bodies cannot exist. We couldn't exist. We couldn't live in that light, and no man's able to approach unto it. thought about Revelation chapter 21. I said that in the beginning God created light, but He lit everything up with the light of God, not artificial light, not natural light. You get to Revelation 21, the Bible said the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. So we find that God is the light of eternity. When God renovates the heavens and the earth, and in chapter number 20, I find in 2 Peter where it talks about the elements will dissolve with fervent heat, all right? You know, it's interesting that the Bible knew that the atmosphere had elements in it before man and science could have ever known. Did you know everything basically in the air you breathe is explosive in its nature? When you get it in the right percentages, I remember in the mines we had a lot of methane gas. Methane gas would burn at 2%. 2 to 5%, it burned 5 to 15%, it would explode. Above 15%, it wouldn't burn or explode. You didn't have enough oxygen to allow it to do that, so it had to be within certain percentages. The air that we breathe out here right now is about 97% nitrogen. You've got very little. You've got about 20% oxygen out here. I'm sorry, I got my figure wrong. You've got about 20% oxygen, and then the rest is nitrogen, except for 1%, which are what we call halogen gases and things of that nature that make up our atmosphere out here. But everything, oxygen will blow up. That's why they don't want you to smoke in a house where they're using pure oxygen. You can't use that in there. You can breathe it, but you can't light anything around that. So we find that in eternity, there's not going to be any night. Now I want to compare it just a moment back to blackness. Where we're going to live is going to be absolute light. But compared to that, there is a godless domain found in the Bible. Over in the book of Jude, the Bible talks about raging waves of the sea foaming out their own shame, wandering stars. He's talking about these wicked people to whom is reserved, now listen to the terminology, the blackness of darkness forever. That's an interesting thing, that hell will have fire, but it will have no light. I found that very interesting. He talks a lot about outer darkness in the Gospels, that there's a place to where there's no natural light, there's no artificial light, and there'll be no light of God in that place. Over in the book of Genesis, or Exodus, the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward the heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. That means a darkness that is smothering. If any of you have problems in tight places, getting in tight places or dark places, some people, they really freak out if you do that. Barbara did. I used to take her up, we had a one room and a path, and I'd take her up the path at night, and I'd carry a flashlight, got up there, she said, now don't turn the light out. She'd go in a little building where we had hell up there. I'd turn the light out. Boy, she couldn't stand sitting in there in the darkness, so I'd aggravate her a little bit. He talks about a darkness in Exodus that could be felt, smothering darkness. When you get back over to the New Testament, in verse number 2 Peter chapter 2, the Bible said these are wells without water, clouds that are carried with the tempest, to whom the mist, he uses that word mist, M-I-S-T, the mist of darkness is reserved forever. That word mist means a cloud or shroud. I want to tell you what hell is going to look like in its darkness. It's like somebody put a blanket over your face and you couldn't breathe. It's a smothering type thing. Some people can't work in the mines. Barbara had a cousin, first day in the mines, he told them, he said, if I had a way out of here, I'd leave and wouldn't wouldn't come back, so they called a man trip and took him out. And Larry never went back. He kept his word. He said, I'm not working down there in that hole in the ground. Some people can't stand that. But hell has a place that's called outer darkness. A place where that lake of fire is that has a smothering blackness that will have the absolute lack of natural light, artificial light, or the light of God. But we find in the Bible when Jesus said, I am the light of the world, the first thing He is what lights the world up. God lights the world up. Hey, He lights up my life. There's a lot in there. That verse I'm going to pick out next week. But I thank God tonight that there's a separation between light and darkness. You can't live in the darkness and the light at the same time. You can't do that. It's impossible. Either the lightness will dim and the darkness take over, or the lightness will brighten, the light will brighten, and the darkness will flee. So He came into the light when He said, the people have sat in great darkness, have sat in darkness, have seen a great light. Boy, He is the light tonight of this world. Amen. Let's stand. We're going to have an invitation. If you need to come, you come. Dark outside, but one of these days it's going to get a whole lot darker. When Christ was on the cross, there were 3 hours of darkness. That was the same darkness they found in the book of Exodus. Nobody moved because nobody could see. Looked at your movies.